This is GARIS Masculist MGTOW flyers. That is 2 3-page essays on the theme of masculism and MGTOW. Written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 157, entitled MGTOW/Masculist Moral Pressure on Women to Adultify. Description. This flyer shows how Masculists, particularly, put enormous moral pressure on women to behave as adults by getting FIP, that's FIP, financially independent person, by getting FIP educations, pulling their own financial weight, not being lazy, and putting the blame for their inferior female status in society on men. Masculists morally pressure women in order to create a FIP society, one of the fundamental goals of the Masculists. Now for the flyer itself. MGTOW/Masculist moral pressure on women to adultify, in other words, become adults. The main idea of this flyer is that women should behave as adults. Women should be financially and morally responsible and not behave as children, putting the blame for their situation on men, taking responsibility for their own female lives. One of the key ideas of the Masculists is that women should be FIPs, FIP, financially independent persons, so that they do not have to parasite off the money of some gullible manslave. Girls need to be socialized by their parents and educated by their teachers to be FIPs, to take charge of their own lives and not expect some male to do that for them. In short, women are expected by Masculists to grow up and be adults the way men are socialized and educated to be. Masculists particularly put enormous moral pressure on women to be FIPs, to study FIP majors at high school, that is, not fluffy crap subjects, that is, non-math, non-sciences, that will exclude them from studying STEM, science, tech, engineering and math majors and the professions at university, which are topics that the economy values because they impart real and valuable skills, and hence the economy is prepared to pay good salaries for them. STEM major women, and professional women, that is FIP women, are able to earn good money and hence be FIPs as adults. Masculists have an utter contempt for fluffies, traditional women who expect to be able to parasite off the money of a manslave. Masculists label such women, quote, immoral, parasitic, manslaving vermin, end quote, to be wiped out by being totally ignored, not even sexed, as punishment for being fluffies, and hence immoral manslavers. The Masculist term fluffy is obviously based on the word fluff, and has connotations of being light, not serious, not adult, not responsible, not career competent, not FIP. There's still a long way to go with the FIPification, although nowadays I use the word simply FIPPing, of young women. At high school today, over 80% of young women of 16 decide effectively to become fluffy crappers by choosing to study fluffy crap in their final 2 years of high school, which will exclude them from studying STEM majors at university, which means, in most cases, that they'll be unable to afford to buy their own middle-class house in their 30s, and will then look around for some manslave to pay for it for her, so that she can raise her kids in it. Masculists are pushing for the creation of a FIP society, in which all adults are FIPs, who are socialized and educated to be FIPs. So that means that enormous moral pressure needs to be placed by society on young, intellectually lazy women to stop choosing the soft option of non-FIP majors at high school. Young women need to be toughened to the marketplace just as much as are young men. With the contraceptive pill, women now typically have 0, 1 or 2 kids, so have a career window of about 40 plus years. The Masculists/MGTOWs now point the finger at women saying, quote, now that women can work, they must work. Anything else is parasitism of the labor of men. The Masculists are very moralistic regarding women. Masculists put strong moral pressure on women to be FIPs, to behave as adults, to take responsibility for their own lives, and treat with contempt the hypocrisy of the fluffy feminists, who put nearly all the blame of women's inferior status in society on men, rather than taking a lot of it upon themselves. Women are treated as the inferior sex, the less respected sex, in all societies, for the simple reason that women contribute less to society than men. Women are less curious than men, less brilliant than men. Men have a 10% higher IQ variance than women, so the genii are men, winning 99% of the science Nobel Prizes. And men have a much higher testosterone than women, testosterone level than women. So are more aggressive, ambitious, driven, persistent, dogged, and hence dominate the performance record, as shown in the Who's Who books. If women want to achieve a higher status in societies around the world, they will need to achieve more and contribute more, instead of being the lazy, shiftless kind of woman that they have traditionally been. Because for most of history, women's role was to raise the next generation, by being constantly pregnant and feeding ankle biters all the time. Traditionally, women did not need to be socialized and educated into the traditional male role of being financially responsible, but those days are dying. In the modern world, women need to be morally pressurized to be FIPs, initially by the Masculists, who will get on the broadcast media and harangue women for being man-slaving parasites and be told that unless they get off their parasitic lazy asses, they will not get a man. In the form of Masculist slogans, be FIP or be manless. Fluffies rot on the shelf. If you wanted to choose one adjective to describe the attitude of the Masculists towards women, it would be, quote, moralistic. That is, Masculists put enormous moral pressure on women to get off their fluffy, parasitic, lazy bums and pull their weight as responsible adults, or if not, they'll be severely punished by men, particularly by Masculists. This Masculist message is spreading. In the UK, for example, young men now judge young women more by their female fitness than by their female looks. This is a healthy development for men in the UK, and I hope it spreads and spreads across the planet. Masculists still have a long way to go before we live in a FIP society. We need to get our message out on the broadcast media to the millions, the billions. We need to get parents to feel the moral obligation to educate their daughters to be FIPs and study FIP majors at high school. We need to motivate teachers at high school and universities to push women to be FIPs. We need to educate the journalists and the media people to think Masculist thoughts so that they pass on the message to the billions, the masses. Then we need to put pressure on the gender politicians to men-fair the gender laws so that the financial massacring of men in the divorce courts stops and the paternity rejection right is brought in, etc. Society needs to be made men-fair systematically across the board. When the fluffy feminists object, the Masculists need to harangue them with vitriolic moralistic pressure, calling them hypocrites who expect to have equal rights with men but not equal obligations. That is, not expecting to become FIPs, so that they can continue to be fluffy parasites on men, particularly after a divorce. Fluffy feminists are particularly despised by Masculists. Masculists see fluffies as the enemy, but even more so with the fluffy feminists, who are not only fluffies, but hypocrites as well. Once this Masculist moralism is well absorbed into the mass mind of young men, they can then be intellectually and morally armed to put enormous moral pressure on their female classmates to get off their lazy, parasitic female bums and FIP up, that is, study FIP majors, to become STEM majors at university and the professions, and then to become career competent, moral FIPs as adults. The Masculists are very moralistic regarding women, because most women are immoral hypocrites and need to be forced to change, or they don't get a man. Such women will be left manless, loveless, sexless, babyless, poor, and increasingly shunned by a society that is becoming increasingly FIP-oriented. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. YouTube channel name, De Garis, Masculist, MGTOW Flyers.